Mary, so you are good to go.
I'd like to thank all members of the Human Relations Commission for joining our meeting this evening. We do have present a quorum of the commission, a substantial quorum of the commission. So we're going to be going ahead with our meeting this evening. I would just like to mention two commissioners that did receive a request just a little bit earlier that Michael Lyles, the city attorney, wishes to be present when the commission discusses item 6D under the agenda. And we're certainly delighted to have Mr. Lyles join us this evening, and want to give him an opportunity to answer any questions that commissioners may have and enter the dialogue. I think in courtesy to Mr. Lyles, I would like to propose that we follow our usual procedure. When we do have a guest present, we would take up that item first. And so with the approval of the commission, we're going to do that. The first item of the agenda actually is the approval of the minutes. We always do this. Would like that the minutes of the meeting were distributed in advance of the session along with our agenda. So I would like to ask if there are any additions or corrections to the minutes. That would be the minutes of our April meeting. Hearing none,
Mike, I actually do have something that I wanted to change because I was quoted in the agenda.
Okay.
In the minutes.
Okay.
And I felt like it didn't really reflect what I said. Although
Okay.
I did go back and listen to the recording, but it said when we were talking about the comprehensive plan.
Right.
You said that Commissioner Mundy said we have given considerable attention to the 400-page plan and questioned whether additional efforts were worth the time. And actually, I was responding to your suggestion that we divide up the report and read it. And what I said was that I had submitted that request a couple months ago, and there did not seem to be an interest from the commissioners. So
Okay.
because I don't really want it to go on record that I thought this was not worth our time, because I do feel like it was worth our time.
Okay, I can adjust the minutes. If you would send me an email that reflected exactly what you said at the meeting, with the approval of the commission, we will adopt the minutes as corrected. So I'm going to restate my question to the commission is with respect to the minutes, we do have a corrected version. Are there any changes that members would make or any objections that members would make to correcting the minutes in the manner indicated by Commissioner Mundy? Hearing none, the minutes shall stand approved as corrected by the action of the commission this evening. Is that okay with you, Commissioner Mundy?
Yes, and I sent you an email too.
Okay, all right. Thank you for doing that. So I'm going to turn our attention. We'll come back to some of the other items after we finish this. I'm going to turn our attention to under new business, item 6D, which is the proposal for public forum on conditions in public housing facilities in the city of Annapolis. Just a couple of observations with respect to this. This was really initiated when the commission received a communication from Alderman Dewan Gay, who is the chair of the Housing and Human Welfare Committee of Annapolis City Council. That response was to an email message which I had previously sent to him. And he suggested to me that the Human Relations Commission conduct a public forum about this topic, record the responses, and prepare recommendations for his committee. He did go on to specifically cite the operation of the Housing and Community Equity Development Commission, and that the commission, in carrying out its review of the conditions in public housing, that the commission specifically include this particular organization on the project. His comments were that the members of this commission are well equipped with their years of housing experience to assist with recommendations. And then he adds, the council could then work with the city manager on a plan forward with this. Please let me know your thoughts. And so the matter is coming to the commission tonight for discussion. I might mention that I did reach out to Teresa Wellman, who is a staff person in the Office of Zoning and Planning, to obtain the name of the current chair of the Housing and Community Equity Development Commission. And she supplied me with the name of that individual. There had been a change in chairs, but I've had no contact with that individual yet, pending the outcome of our discussion this evening. So the question for the commission this evening is whether or not it would proceed with holding a public forum on conditions in public housing facilities in the city. I believe that that would be consistent with the commission's ability in the city code. We do have the authority to conduct studies and reports and to hold public hearings. That's specified in the code. But I wanted to give Mr. Lyles an opportunity to share his thoughts and his views on this, and then we can have a dialogue about it. Before I ask Mr. Lyles to go forward, I'm seeing Commissioner Hurley asking to speak. And so
just briefly, Mike, as you know, we had a fairly extensive discussion about it last meeting, and there was a consensus that we needed to do homework on that. I offered to send an email to Mr. Manasseh and his I guess his superior, the director of planning, Jacobiak. Am I pronouncing that correctly? I thought it was a pretty nice email saying that we'd like to have him meet with us, and got no response. And then I sent a further letter, I guess on August 15th to Tricia, who's been helpful all the time, and saying that had no response and still have no response. So I think I'm glad folks are here tonight, because we would like to proceed.
Okay, thank you, Commissioner Hurley. Mr. Lyles, what's your thoughts on this? We appreciate your coming to the meeting tonight. We really do. And we're delighted to have you. And the commission will certainly weigh with a considerable degree of import what you have to say tonight, since you do represent the city as the legal officer of the city. And I might say that your colleague, Carrie Berger, has been an extremely effective representative for the Office of Law. She's done really, really well. She's been present at, I think, every meeting she's able to attend. And so I would just like to let you know that we really think very highly of Carrie and the work that she's done with the commission.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair.
That said, I'm going to let you go forward, sir.
Well, first of all, it's a pleasure for me to be here. And some of you may or may not know, I was the executive director of the Human Relations Commission in Prince George's County for 8 years under the Baker administration. So I've got quite a extensive history with human relations commissions, the work regionally and nationally of bodies such as this, as we've done a fair amount of fair housing and discrimination enforcement on behalf of the commission for those years. And so I really appreciated being able to work with, Ms. Ebola Peters, who was on the commission with us on a regional level. And we really appreciated getting to know Annapolis from that vantage point. But I'm here today really to assist with answering any questions that you might have with how you might proceed and go forth. I do not think that there is an incredible amount of information that or resources that would overlap with what's going on with the litigation. But to the extent that the litigation concerns you and what we've discovered in that litigation, I'd be happy to answer any questions that you might have. We understand your independent authority to do such an investigation. We, at the early stages of the litigation, are kind of hamstrung by the court in doing a lot of discovery in the case. And so there's not a lot for us to find out as a city, but we do know certain things. One, we know that the public housing, mostly in the city, owned by the Housing Authority of the City of Annapolis, which owns most of the units, has been in existence for about 50 or 60 years. When it was built substandard on a swamp and was highly segregated. We knew at that time that HUD was the primary funder of the upkeep, maintenance, and operation of the Housing Authority. Now, over the years, since then, at least in the last 20 years, HUD has gone away from public housing in the old model, which HACA represents, and is going to different models where there are mixed use, mixed income units, as opposed to these kind of segregated enclaves or islands of despair, as Martin Luther King addressed them. Unfortunately for us, the city is involved in litigation by individual residents in the Housing Authority units, and they are claiming that the inspection that we did during a period of time created a condition in the units that is harmful and discriminatory. Of course, we zealously reject any theory in that regard because, as we've shown in the last 2 years, when we've inspected on a regular basis, like we do market rate apartments, the conditions have gotten worse. So we have shown, I think, and we will show to the court that the city is not the main mover of the conditions in these Housing Authority units or public housing. Mostly it's HUD's defunding of public housing over the last 20, 30 years. And, we'd be appreciative to answer any questions you might have, not only about the litigation as it's proceeding, but what we have discovered in our limited discovery in the last 2 or 3 years we've been involved in litigation. If I can assist with any of the information that you might want to proceed through your own course to get, I will be happy to assist with some ideas. Thank you.
Are you suggesting, Mr. Lyles, that the commission's initiation of a public forum would interfere with the litigation and specifically the city's presentation of its case?
Nope, I'm not.
Good.
Okay.
I would note though that to the extent that certain information that the city might give or might be requested, we would have to view that in the context of litigation so that we are not providing information or evidence that would be conflicting with what we provided to the city. So we may, have to be involved, much like we were involved in litigation and defending the position of the city, and making that uniform and consistent in every forum that our folks appear.
Well, what advice would you have to the commission in terms of our proceeding on this? Again, we do have a request from a city alderman on this to do this. And we wish to be responsive. In addition, the commission is very concerned because we have had reports of people living in the facilities that conditions are just deplorable.
Yeah, well, I think the first thing, Mr. Chair, that you might want to do is figure out where all the public housing is and who owns it. Where it is and who owns it.
Okay.
Third thing, how long have they owned it? And fourthly, what have been the conditions of the units over the period of time of ownership? Because one of the things that you want to also ask the requester is, what is the requester, the council person, trying to find out that we already don't know based on the litigation? You may be doing double work. You may be asking for things that have not been asked, which would be great. You may be finding things that haven't been found out, which would be wonderful. We think for the city's position anyway. But we also think that there has been some discovery of information by the plaintiff's attorneys in the case that might be helpful to your understanding. There's been very little discovery that we've done on our side because we've been hampered by the court. But the first thing is to understand, what is the requester trying to get at? When you say the conditions of public housing, what about the conditions can be rectified by the city? One, what about the conditions can be rectified by the owners of the public housing units? Two, and three, if there can be no rectifying of the conditions, then how do we get out of this mess that we're in? Is a problem that I think we have. And to some, especially the plaintiffs in the case who are suing us, they believe the city's responsible. The city hasn't owned public housing ever. And the city hasn't funded public housing ever. The city hasn't repaired or maintained or operated public housing ever. In addition, public housing, which exists in various forms throughout the city, is not all the same. And it's definitely not like market rate rental housing. For instance, the Naval Academy has public housing, housing that it rents to lower level employees and active duty service members and their families. But we're not allowed to inspect that federal enclave. In fact, I would argue that it's one of the better kept and maintained and operated public housing units in the city. But part of your review should be, where is the public housing? Who owns it? Who manages it? And how is it funded? And then when you get to the conditions, how long have the conditions been maintained? Who can remediate any bad conditions? And where's the funding source for doing so? Those are really important questions.
Okay, I'd like to ask for commissioners to respond to the points that the city attorney is giving us, and these, I think he is outlining steps that the commission could take with respect to a public hearing in terms of the specific information that we should be gathering before the commission would render any kind of recommendations on this. And I think he was pretty clear about that. But I would like to hear comments from members of the commission. Chuck?
More of a question. I mean, I have no interest in getting involved in the litigation either side, but we do have an interest in seeing conditions improve for people in the city. Now, sir, what is the city's position on whose responsibility it is to improve HACA housing and then also, privately owned public housing? I mean, there is a city inspection system, all right, for that housing.
There is a city inspection system
Right.
for all rental properties.
Right.
With respect to who is responsible for the maintenance and upkeep and the conditions are the owners of those properties. The city does not own public housing in the city of Annapolis. There are various public owners of public housing, and there are many owners of private rental housing.
Right.
And they are all responsible for maintaining their properties. The inspection regime that the city engages all of these property owners on is one to help alleviate and to address with the owners the conditions that could fall into blight or slum-like conditions. So we're there to hopefully, through the enforcement, move them to keep conditions and safe, sanitary, and healthy. To the extent that they don't, we have fines. We can condemn units. We can shut down units, and we've done that. HACA, though, is in a special category because only until 2020 those units never had a city inspection regime like we inspect private rental units. Because when you inspect private rental units, there is an economic incentive to ensuring that you don't get fined, that you have apartments open to be rented. With HACA, however, they don't have the same funding source to allow them. They don't have the same profit motive. So if we fine HACA, that takes money out of the pockets of HACA to make the improvements. If we inspect and shut down units, then those units are offline, and HUD changes the formula by which they fund HACA. So for every unit that we condemn, HUD penalizes HACA and tells them they can't get the money that they would normally be used to fund the repairs, operation, and maintenance of those units. So our inspections is really redundant with HUD's own inspections and HACA's inspections. And since we've been inspecting HACA units like we inspect private property owners, rental units, the conditions have only gotten worse. It's something that we knew before the state mandated that the city inspect them in this way. But they went to court and the city settled, and in a consent decree agreed that we were going to inspect them just like we inspect market rate rental units. But that's been a disaster. We said it would be, we knew it would be, but we settled anyway because someone thought it was a great idea. It's a bad idea. And now HACA is almost bankrupt because they can't pay the fines. If the apartments are unlicensed, they can't rent them. If they can't rent them, then they can't kick the tenants out for non-payment of rent. And HUD penalizes them for not being able to collect rents and have condemned units on their rolls.
Commissioner
Can I follow
Hatch,
up?
Commissioner Hurley, I want to call on Commissioner
I would
Hatch.
defer. I would defer. I have a follow-up question if I could, though. Sir, you have obviously a lot of knowledge about the conditions, and I'm sure. You've laid out the problems as the city sees them. What are the possibilities of improving those conditions? Well, knowing what you know, what is it that could improve the conditions in the housing in Annapolis?
For public housing, in the model in which HACA exists, tearing them down, moving all of the residents out into market rate apartments somewhere where they are given subsidies to live wherever they want to live, but not in segregated 60-year-old units that have outlived their usefulness and should be torn down, mainly because public housing as a concept was never intended for generational living. It was never intended for an adult to live their adult life in the units, like market rate is. You go into a market rate apartment, you can stay there 10 and 20 years. The standard of the materials, the construction is built around people living their lives there. Public housing, since 1935, the Franklin Roosevelt administration was always intended to be a way to help people up and out of poverty and back into the private rental market or buying homes. With World War II, the GI Bill, a lot of people were brought out of that system. And the public housing was just a leg up. For whatever reason, because of segregated housing patterns in the cities, most of those units became generational housing for African Americans mostly. And so, but they were never built to stand the test of time. They were always built to be, people go in, they go out, and they would be torn down at some point. These have lasted far beyond their useful life, and we're all paying a price for that concept.
Commissioner Hatch, you had wanted to ask a question or make a comment?
Well, like Commissioner Hurley said, I definitely see that the city attorney is very knowledgeable about what's going on when it comes to the conditions in housing. My question for you, Mr. Lyles, is what recommendations would you make to a person or a family who is currently living in those conditions to address the housing complex about the conditions that they're living in?
Yeah, I think there are two outlets. One outlet is to receive the vouchers that HACA now controls. Also, the state controls through Department of Community Housing Development, also controls a number of vouchers. They should get those vouchers and they should leave HACA and live somewhere better and nicer, more healthful and sanitary. What we found, interestingly enough, is that some of the people who've been there generationally don't want to leave the neighborhood. And that is something that's holding back a lot of redevelopment and a lot of moving folks out of there, because if it were up to the city, we'd probably find the money to get everybody out and move them across the county and across the state. As a matter of fact, if you looked at public housing, which would be a great thing for you to do, look at public housing in Anne Arundel County outside of the city of Annapolis or in the state of Maryland. You'll see that most of it doesn't exist in the way that it existed 50 years ago. It's people of a limited means living in market rate apartments with a subsidy. They live in better surroundings, better environments, closer to schools. They're not segregated. It's just a better situation all the way around. And that would be a good thing to investigate, because you'll see how there is a difference in what we've tried to maintain here as a good idea. It's really a bad idea. That's why they got rid of them in Baltimore, through most of the country, and they're going in. HUD itself is even funding a different approach called the RAD approach, which basically funds communities for building and integrating people not based on income, right? Into the community. And HUD kind of provides funding for folks to live wherever they want to live.
Wow.
So as a follow-up to that, so your recommendation to address things like the one of the common complaints and concerns that we're hearing about is the mold, is for a person to get a voucher to get out of those conditions. When we know that also that the voucher system can also can be a struggle for a family, because they're constrained to a certain amount of money that they're able to use in order to get into that apartment. So that is a challenge in and of itself. I'm looking really more for what are some other actions inclusive of getting a voucher that a person can take to address the conditions that we're finding a lot of families inside of these different apartment units.
Well, again, it's a comparison of the HACA units versus other public housing. I'm not aware of what other kinds of public housing exist outside of HACA in the city, except for a couple of instances. But it's really just it's a lack of funding. And I think the Housing and Urban Development Department has the answer to that. They're funding HACA to 80%. The rest comes from rents. So if rents are down and HACA money and HUD money is not coming in at the rate it should, then how do you correct that? I would say that there's a lot more bang for the buck by giving vouchers, because right now repairing the buildings in the HACA properties that we all know about is a failing proposition, because you can't repair your way out of bad construction, buildings that were built on swampy areas. They just built Newtown 20, and what do you have? Leaky roofs, water coming in the basement. I mean, they built in the wrong place with substandard materials, and you can't maintain your way out of those problems. You've got to put people of limited means in the best places possible, and those places exist in the private rental market, and you provide subsidy for them to live there. The other way that cities are doing it across the country, and I've been involved in, is working with private development companies to build market rate units that are mixed use and mixed income, so that the commercial properties help to pay and subsidize some of the rents. You have a certain level of income in the properties that helps to subsidize and pay for management and operations of the properties. And then people of limited means, to a certain percentage, 10 or 15%, live in the same buildings as people of average or more than average means.
So what I'm hearing, Mr. Lyles, is that you aren't objecting to the commission doing a report with recommendations on this topic, but rather that we understand and outline in the report some of the premises that need to be taken here. And you had outlined that specifically is how long have people lived there, who is responsible for the conditions, who is responsible for correcting those conditions, and what role specifically does the city, or what obligation does the city have in this situation as opposed to other parties? Is that a fair summary?
Yeah, and maybe what obligation the funders of those units have to keep them
Right.
maintained at a very high level. If HUD funded your own house at 80% and there was a crack or something that needed to be repaired, you probably try to find a way for HUD to help you pay for whatever needed to be to remunerate it, or renovate it. So I think that it's really just kind of an open-ended question, but I was just kind of giving you some direction and some things to look at as you start your investigation that might walk you down a path of logic when it comes to how to correct things. If your aim is to find out how to correct what's going on, you got to start with how do we get in the situation in the first place.
Mm-hmm.
And you also have to look at the differences between public housing owned by HACA and public housing owned by other entities, and what the difference in management operations is. Where do they get their funding? How do they manage operations? How do they fund repairs? How do they meet the challenges of inspections? And then compare public housing units owned by different folks and see what the differences are. And maybe there may be some changes that could be suggested.
Are there any public housing units in the city of Annapolis that are not specifically run by HACA?
Yeah, there are.
Yeah. The Newtown 20 is owned by Penrose.
Yeah, that's been renovated though, I think, completely.
Right. Well, yeah, they tore down New 20, they built new buildings.
Yeah.
But they're owned and managed by Penrose.
Okay.
Owned by HACA, managed by Penrose. The Naval Academy has subsidized housing on the campus for active duty. I'd really like to see the difference, how they maintain theirs. My recent inspection looks really, really nice.
Yeah.
And folks pay very little. Active duty folks pay very little to stay in there. I'd like to see what the inspection regime there, how they're funded, and whether or not the city doesn't inspect them, but they stay nice. Well, how did that happen? Right?
That might be a bit tricky, given as you noted earlier, Mr. Lyles, a federal installation, you run into all kinds of issues with that. I remember quite a number of years ago, there was an employment complaint that was filed with the commission by an employee of the U.S. Naval Academy. And we went around and around with it. The bottom line in the end was the superintendent did not want us anywhere near that issue. Even though we did get some opinion that because they were in the city of Annapolis, that they were subject to the rules and the laws of the city. But in the end, the matter was mediated successfully, and we didn't have to go too far. But that your description of it, of the thing with the Naval Academy brought that back to my memory. One thing I think the commission will certainly do in this matter. First thing we have to do, at least in my judgment, is we need to speak with the chair and possibly all members of this housing commission that Alderman Gay made reference to. And but what I would like, again, this is up to the commission. What I would like is for us to put together a proposal for direction in terms of, we would outline the specific questions that we want to have answered, and to address the issues that you have raised about looking at specifically the issues of who's the owner, and who's responsible for doing the repairs, and what kind of cost is involved, and what has been the history of funding from HUD and the like, and to put together a proposal, and we'd share it with you before the commission actually went forward and started a full-scale investigation of it. Just to give you an opportunity to respond back with additional comments that you have, and have the benefit of having them in writing.
Sure.
Is that something that you would be supportive of?
Sure.
Okay.
We're here to help. We're here to help you uncover the facts. We know what the facts are. In the case that we're involved in, the plaintiffs nor the judge seem to know what the facts are, and hopefully the facts coming out into light would be helpful to everybody. Okay.
Commissioner Mundy has a question, and so does Commissioner Hurley, but I'll call on Commissioner Mundy. She hasn't had a chance to speak so far. Linda?
Hi. Thanks for your information. I was really surprised to hear you say that you think the answer is moving out to Anne Arundel County and the rest of Maryland. And I felt like that in itself is discriminatory of our city, that, if people can't afford to live here, and we know what the cost of living is here, then they should just move out. And that's not necessarily the city that we want, I don't think. So I guess I'm just confused by that statement that you made, because I think overall our worry is that there is discrimination against people that are in public housing, that are in some of the developments that already are offering vouchers, and that are not given safe and healthy living conditions. And so who's responsible for that? And yes, I do agree it's the owners, but I also feel like the city is responsible for ensuring that the owners are creating safe and healthy living spaces. So that was a lot, but one, I'm surprised by your statement on just move everybody out. Two, does the city feel like it's responsible for anything? And three, Wilbourn Estates is brand new and has mold issues. So we can't also blame it on the old housing.
Well, my statement was they should have vouchers to move wherever they want to move in the city, in the county, in the state. Wherever there is decent, safe, and sanitary housing, they should be able to move there and not be hamstrung by geography, which is what's going on here. The mistaken assumption is that we have all the answers in substandard constructed housing that is past its useful life. I do not believe that you can repair your way and renovate your way out of these units. Newtown 20 was an acknowledgement that you can't do that. You've got to totally renovate, totally build new in order to put people into safe and healthy and sanitary units. These units are not going to ever be repaired to the point where they're going to be income producing for HACA. Additionally, does the city have responsibility? The city has a responsibility to ensure that all of the apartments in its jurisdiction, and we do not believe until 2020 HACA was in our jurisdiction. HACA was a federal enclave, funded 80 to 85% by housing and urban development, and the rest by low rents. The fact that we started inspecting in 2020 by state mandate has produced what is now almost a bankrupt situation in HACA. They weren't bankrupt until we started inspecting, because once we start inspecting, we have to shut down units that are unsafe. We have to fine HACA. They have no money to pay those fines. We've already waived $80,000 in fines. Last year alone, they had over 400 citations that they couldn't pay. They're supposed to be paying for the inspections. They can't pay it. And so to treat them like a private market renter is a bad concept in our view. Whether there's responsibility, I think it's everybody's responsibility in the country that people of limited means have somewhere healthy, safe to live. Does that mean you should get sued and empty your wallet into making sure that that happens? No, I think we have to come together and find a solution that we can all agree on and afford. Right now, HUD's $60 billion budget, they seem to not want to afford anything and not want to take responsibility for anything. The city does not have the money to assume responsibility for these units that we did not build, do not operate, do not manage, and day to day cannot renovate.
Chuck?
Another question. Obviously, you know a fair amount about this. I'm not sure I agree with all, but I respect your knowledge. What are the best success models in the country that the city could follow out of this? You mentioned obviously vouchers as available from the state and the county, and but what city has best done it? Because I mean, obviously this kind of HUD housing has been in virtually all big cities. What city has done the best job of serving low-income folks and getting them into decent housing?
I'm not aware of a city that's actually done it, A1. I mean, everybody's struggling with the same problems. HUD has gone to a RAD model, which is kind of like a demonstration. It stands for some acronym that I can't remember, but basically what it does is it funds the jurisdiction and private homeowners and developers to build model units and then to subsidize those units for folks living in them of limited means. There are many different models I've seen. The Newtown 20 model is a different model as well, where the housing authority still owns the property, but the property itself is managed by a third party and built and managed by a third party. In this case, the folks Penn. So these are the, it's very hard to get out of a situation that took like 50, 60 years to get into. And I don't know that anyone's done it just right. And so if you could figure that out, I mean, somebody would pay you a lot of money to help solve the problem.
Okay, Commissioner Leach?
My question is, if HUD actually built and owns the properties, why aren't they fined? Why is the city being fined when HUD owns the buildings
Well, the city's not being fined. The city's being sued.
or sued?
Yeah.
Why shouldn't HUD be responsible for all these things that are wrong with it?
That's a question we continue to ask. We cross-claimed them early on in the litigation. The court let them out. But through discovery, we may end up hopefully bringing them back in. But at the initial stages, they were dismissed out of the case. But we think that they're the right party to come in. They're an indispensable party to making sure that this project of housing, survives in some
Sure.
form or fashion.
Well, there are a lot of dimensions to this issue. There's no question about that. And I think city attorney has been, very forthright in bringing these out. Lots of things that the commission is going to have to consider as we go forward with this. What I'd like to do is to get a sense of the commission in terms of a.
Commissioner Williams has a question. He has.
Oh, I'm sorry. I didn't notice that. I'm sorry. Thank you for alerting me to that, Commissioner Mundy. Commissioner Williams?
Yeah, thank you. Mr. Lyles, just a quick question. In terms of the litigation, I guess where do you see, or where is the litigation? I know you said you're in the discovery phase. I know the discovery phase can be a long process, but is there any resolution and potentially resolution in sight? I guess after you conclude discovery, move that matter forward.
Yeah, unfortunately, we're still in what's called preliminary motions. The plaintiffs filed a motion for summary judgment, meaning they, based on the information they collected from the city and the limited discovery that they had, that the city is discriminating against the people that live in Haka. They filed a motion. We won the motion, but the court's giving them another bite at the apple to amend their motion and file again. So they're going to file again. The courts allowed us to do some limited discovery, basically to do a deposition of their expert. Their expert revised his report after we found it to be insufficient. So the court basically laid out a roadmap for them to be successful. And so they're now going to amend their motion. We're going to do a deposition of their expert in about a week or two, and they're going to file a motion, and I'm going to file a responsive motion in opposition. After that, we'll see what happens. There are many counts to their complaint. This is just the first one. The first one being, did the city discriminate by not inspecting Haka? And was that discrimination based on race? And was it the robust cause of the harm these people in the units are facing? And so, we have to go through that process, probably take about 2 or 3 months for the motion, the discovery, the motion, the response, and the judge's decision. Maybe about 6 months for that. After that, depending on how that turns out, there will be robust discovery where we can depose people and we can have a lot more subpoena power and that kind of thing. And we can ask from the plaintiffs different things that need to be asked of the plaintiffs about how they're harmed. That would probably take about a year and a half before we even get to the point where we're filing motions, probably 6 months for summary judgment motions, and then another 6 months to get to trial. So we're probably looking at a trial in 3, 4, 5 years, maybe.
Jesus.
And the plaintiff believes that the city has money to settle the case. But I will tell you right now, if you looked at the budget book, the city does not have the money to settle this case. The city, even if it loses, has no money to pay it. And that puts everybody at a very interesting crossroads at that point.
I'm going to ask if there's any additional questions for the city attorney from commissioners. Any additional comments?
I have one more
Yes,
question.
yes, yeah, Commissioner Mundy.
You said, who gets the subsidies? Did you say that the city gets the subsidies and then pays Penrose, or Haka gets the subsidies and then pays, or who from HUD?
HUD pays Haka subsidy
Right.
to operate the housing authority. It's been that way from the beginning.
Right,
Owns the property that the new town or the new properties that is the renovated Newtown 20 sits on, but Penrose actually manages it
right. Well,
um,
HUCA pays
by a
Penrose.
contract.
Right,
But there are no city funds that go to support the operation, maintenance of anything at the Housing Authority or at the new Penrose managed properties, the new Newtown 20. That we don't have enough taxpayer dollars free to do that. It's many millions of dollars.
right,
Plus, the rental units, if they're rented, the occupants should be paying rent. To the extent, however, that our inspections create a situation where those units can't be licensed, then the owners can refuse to pay rent. If they get evicted, the court will allow them to stay in the units because they don't have to pay rent on an unlicensed unit. So HACA loses again.
Oh.
Because they can't kick people out, the units remain unlicensed, and they can't collect rent, and the tenants know that, and so they don't pay rent.
okay, thank you.
Okay, I'm going to propose a way forward on this, and the commissioner can make a judgment about it. I think our first step is to get together with this equity commission, that Housing and Equity Commission that was recommended. We speak with by Alderman Gay, and I've got contact for their chair, and I can get in touch with them and say, here's what we're proposing to do. Do you want to join us in this? And yes, we've had a recommendation from Alderman Gay that we would benefit greatly by having their support and their involvement. But that secondly, that we would put together what I could call a research design, which would basically be a series of steps that we would follow in conducting an investigation on this, and that would include both the questions that we'd ask, and as well as the interview process in terms of it, and then finally what we would do with the results once they were available, and what recommendations, if any, we would have. How does that relate to people? Are people comfortable with that?
Mike, is that a city commission that you referred to from Duane Gay?
It is.
Is it a private commission?
I'm not sure what its status is. It's not a standing committee of the city, as far as I know. I think it is. I'm just hunching it here. I think it's an entity of the city's Housing and Human Welfare Committee. That is a standing committee of the city. But I'm not real sure what their status is, except that the alderman thinks very highly of them.
Mr. Lyles or Tricia, do you know who they are? Or not familiar with them.
Yeah, I know. We helped prepare the legislation that established the commission, but we have not been familiar with what they've been doing the last few months. I think they've had a couple of meetings.
But it's
You know how
official
long-
committee. Okay,
It's
sorry, go ahead,
They're
Mike.
listed as a
commission.
board or commission of the city. They're like, because of their name, Affordable Housing, they're the first board or commission that's identified on the website. But like Mike, I really couldn't tell
Okay.
you with any depth what that.
Well,
Wow.
it won't be hard to get in contact with them. And we can simply ask whether they're interested in joining us in this venture. I think that would be it, and then we can go forward with it. But are there other thoughts that commissioners have on this? If we're going to do this, we ought to get it underway.
My only thought is that once again, I continue to say, I don't want us to have any kind of public hearing or town hall where we ask people to come out and share their suffering and trauma, and then we can't do anything about it,
I
right?
agree.
That's the part that worries me because it just seems like everybody's pointing the finger, because we also saw the HACA op-ed recently written by the executive director at HACA that was kind of pointing the finger at the city of Annapolis,
Yeah.
taking too long with inspections, and that was the cause of them losing money, right? So there's just so many layers here. And I think we definitely need to have a better understanding of them all. I mean, there may be that we need to talk about to HACA as well and hear their side. So I think if we're gonna do it, we definitely need to be as educated as we can. Obviously, we don't live, and nobody here lives in any of these communities, so that's hard too. But we need to educate ourselves as much as possible, because that's why there's a lawsuit. People are just feeling like they're not being heard, you know, and that's why I think Alderman Gay suggested to us if we want to take it up to do it, because their committee has not been able to make a lot of progress on. They had a lot of those property managers, and you know, they had a lot of them into their meetings last year and really weren't able to get anywhere with them other than solving a few individual problems. So
Would commissioners like to have a joint meeting with this other commission that's been referenced this evening?
Sure.
Sure.
Yes.
But, Mike, I agree with what Linda said, but in a slightly different way. I mean, we need to identify some success model going forward that, yes, would provide decent housing to people on a sustainable basis. You know, just to join the circular system right now that isn't providing that is not. I agree with Linda. We shouldn't hold any meeting that holds out false hope. We have the magic to fix it. Unless we can identify a positive road forward, I think we need to do homework.
And it's interesting, I would just say too, that the one party that refuses to provide information and to stand in the gap is U.S. Department of Housing and Urban Development with a $60 billion budget.
All right.
We met with them last week, and they can't fund any resolution. But the city of Annapolis with a $150 million budget is supposed to, and we can't hire enough police officers to, you know, with our public safety budget. We can't hire. I mean, to put all this on the city when we didn't create these units, we didn't build them, we didn't operate them, we don't manage them, and for HACA to say that we're the problem because we didn't come back on the second inspection when they couldn't pass the first inspection, and then couldn't renovate and rehab the properties. So why come back? You're not gonna. It's just, you know, the city's not the issue, and I'm just sorry that we've got the citizens all rolled up in this thing, and it's our hope that the real individuals who can really do something come to the table and work this out with all parties.
Right.
Okay, you know, what you've got here though is you've got three, and correct me if I'm wrong, you've got three parties here. You've got the city of Annapolis, you've got HACA, and you've got the Department of Housing and Urban Development. And they are the parties in this legal dispute. Am I correct on that?
Well,
Mr.
the
Lyles?
parties are the plaintiffs, the tenants in a class action. You've got, they're the plaintiffs. They are suing the city and they're suing the housing authority.
Okay.
If you go into the history of the housing authority, I think before the most recent executive director, I think they went through 8 executive directors in about 12 years. So something's going on with that model. And it's not, I don't want to point a finger at anyone other than the people who want to prop that model up. If you're propping up the model of segregated housing in poor conditions that are 60 and 70 years old, it's the wrong model. You got to go to a different model, and you got to do it quickly. What does that take? It takes money. It takes money the city does not have. But we know who has it, and they need to give it to us and give it to us quickly so we
But that's not, I mean, I don't want to call it a red herring, but if you spread $60 billion out across 50 states and Lord knows how many cities and units, they don't have the dough either to do what we all want.
Okay.
So we got to find a model that I'm not in disagreement. We need a success model that would actually serve these folks
Yes.
on a sustainable basis and hopefully even move them to independence at some point.
Well, what they're doing with their money is propping up the old system in the city of Annapolis and maybe one or two other places in the country.
How many folks still have this same system we do across the country?
Maybe one or two. I think the District of Columbia has one in St. Louis, and they're quickly trying to rid themselves of these properties and renovate them into mixed use, mixed income, and taking the residents and spreading them around into market rate apartments built
Which is
all
what
over.
should have been done years ago. Yeah.
Yes.
Okay, I think we've got some very valuable information this evening. I think
Thanks.
yes. Did someone ask to speak? I don't see any hands up. I think we've got a lot of very good information this evening, and I think this has been a very informative session. I think we've all learned something as a result of it. And I think the commission, is in better position to understand what kind of a study it needs to do here. But I think, again, our first step will be to get together with this particular commission that the alderman had recommended we speak with, and then see where we go from here. Mr. Lyles, we thank you for coming to the commission this evening. This has been very informative and I think very, very helpful to us. I think we're going to be deliberative in our approach to this. So thank you.
Thank you so much. Good night, everybody.
Thank you.
Good night. Okay, I'm going to go back to the start of the agenda. I'm going to call on Claudia. Do you have a staff liaison report this evening?
It's a brief report, and it just acknowledges that the city of Annapolis again this year will be awarding students from either St. Mary's High School and Annapolis High School plaques and a check for what we repeatedly do each year in honor of students that are chosen by the schools. So that is in the process, and it's my understanding that will continue.
Okay, and Claudia, you did get my email message in which I indicated the names of the winning students and also the dates of the award ceremony. Okay, all right. I think she said.
I remember, yes.
And yes, that. Okay, in terms of the chair's report, I've got, if you don't feel that we're getting ourselves into more things that we can possibly handle, I've got something else for you. I received a contact from, again, it was just within the last week, from Dan, I guess his last name is Pontius, Dan Pontius of the Baltimore Metropolitan Council. And he told me that the council was going to be updating the Baltimore Regional Housing Analysis that it did in year 2020, a very comprehensive examination of fair housing in the state of Maryland, and that they're going to prepare a report that will be ready for distribution in January of 2025. He was very hopeful that the Human Relations Commission would once again play an important role in identifying issues and concerns within the city on this. And this is an important project, it's an important report. It goes to lots and lots of people. and there's usually a pretty good team that puts it together. I certainly responded. I certainly told him that please keep the commission in the loop on this, and that we would assist in every way we can. We really do want to help this report. My recollection from 4 years ago, actually closer to 5 years ago, was that they ended up talking with just about anybody in the city who had anything to do with fair housing issues. Since we're responsible for enforcing that law, we are near the top of their list. One of the things that I thought of immediately, though, was to recommend that they contact Dr. Asha Smith from Anne Arundel County government. She is responsible for for an office which deals with equity and human rights. And I said, you ought to get in contact with them because Anne Arundel County has come a long way in just a short period of time. The other thing that for us will present a bit of a challenge is that I immediately, of course, would have turned to Teresa Wellman, who has been involved in public housing issues for quite a while. And she informed me that she is retiring as of June the 1st. So we won't have her assistance with that regard. But I just wanted to make the commission aware of this. I know there will be a kickoff Zoom call a week from tomorrow. It's going to be the 14th at noon. I'm going to try to make it. I really am to do it. But if there are commissioners who are really interested in this, all we need is just one commissioner to be there if they ask about the city of Annapolis. That will be the only thing that we'll be responsible for, is the city of Annapolis. Not responsible for the county, not responsible for other jurisdictions around the state. So I wanted to make you aware of that. The second thing I want you to make you aware of is that the Maryland General Assembly has created a new protected category and in the civil rights legislation in the state, and that is military status. That bill passed the General Assembly. It's on the governor's desk. If it hasn't already been signed, I'm certain the governor will sign it. I'm certain he will. He's very oriented toward military families. And if he does, and once he does, then that is something that will have to be added to our list of protected category groups that can file if they're a victim of discrimination. But I don't want to do it right now because I want to make sure the governor's going to sign the bill. And so once I learn that he has signed the bill, we'll have that added to our website, and we'll need to reprint our brochure because the brochure will need to be that'll be added to it. The final thing is to thank Madeline for doing the Zoom technology for us this evening. So Madeline, thank you so much. That's Madeline Horrell of City of Annapolis TV.
You are so welcome.
Okay, are there any questions about my report or Claudia's report? Okay, we're going to start down on new business. We'll see how far we get this evening. Some of this is going to go pretty quickly, though, I suspect. The first item there under 6A is the implementation of HRC web page improvements. And I've got a really positive response on that. Let me make a very brief comment about it. We've succeeded in a number of things, and I'd like to thank Ina Young of the staff IT department, and for Tricia for their efforts in bringing this to a successful fruition. As of now, complaints can now be submitted electronically from the HRC webpage, as well as filled out and sent in using the traditional PDF. Second, a description of the commission's complaint process has been added to the webpage. Third, an interactive map has been created to identify whether or not an alleged act of discrimination has occurred within the geographical boundaries of the city of Annapolis. And finally, arrangements are underway with PEG Studio to prepare a video for our webpage in which I will discuss the role and achievements of the commission. So this has been a really big victory. It's a long time coming. And once again, thank Anna Young, who's just an incredible resource. She always says yes if you ask her help. And also for Tricia for spearheading this thing through. The second item we've got is inclusion training for commissioners. I sent the commissioner an email, which was a forwarded one from Tricia, mentioning that the commission members are invited to join the staff of the Office of Human Resources in inclusion training. 3 dates were given. I've signed up for one. I'm going to be there. Hoping other commissioners will do this. We've asked for this, and hopefully we'll get a good.
Yeah, there's only 2 dates left, Mike. One is passed.
Okay, well,
Because the first session was held on May the 1st.
okay.
They're virtual. And the trainer, we're getting incredibly good feedback about the trainer that we're using. That Dr. Shauna Payne-Gold. And the next session is the 13th of May, which is Monday, 8:30 to noon. You will not be disappointed. Please make time for this. And May the 15th is the next session from 1 to 4:30. And I sent the email to you, Mike. You have to go and register because that's the only way you're going to get your virtual link. You can't just look at the email last minute and jump in there. You have to actually go on, register, and then she'll send you the link to the virtual meeting.
Is it sent automatically and quickly, or?
It'll be sent quickly, but you have to register.
Okay, yeah, I better check to see, because I know I signed up for something. I remember it was that. I'm sure I've got it. I've got it, but if I can't find it, I'll look for it. If
Yeah, but we will be having training with this particular trainer again in the future, different topic, probably more focused on gender identity, LGBTQI plus is really more the focus of that one. We'll probably do that in the summer is my thought. We'll see the best schedule for that. And,
Yeah,
and you're welcome to join that as well. We'll make sure that we'll always include you.
yeah, I'm pretty sure that I registered for it because I'm pretty sure that I did. So I'm sure I would have the email there somewhere that would to do it. But I urge, if commissioners want the original invitation, what you may want to do, Tricia, is to send the invitation again to me, and I'll forward it out to all commissioners.
Okay, I can do that.
Yeah, I'll just take care of that. Okay, the next item here we're gonna.
I have a question.
Oh yeah. Go ahead, Rosemary. I'm sorry.
Before we got too far off the subject, I did register for next week's
Awesome.
training.
Good.
And the question that I have is totally of my own self-interest. Will there be a certificate of attendance given to us?
Yes.
Yes, because I could use it for my professional certification. So thank you.
Yes, there will, for sure.
Okay, good. Okay, the next item which we're going to talk about here is
Well, Mike, before you move off of that, I noticed on the agenda you don't have mention of the Maryland Commission on Civil Rights Hate Crimes Forum.
I'm basically getting right to it now
Okay,
because it's
I'll
going to be
zip it.
combined. It's going to be combined with a report on the grant
Okay,
proposal. So yeah, I hadn't forgotten that.
okay, good.
Under C, it's the grant proposal for responding to activities of hate groups. The governor's, Tricia made me aware that the governor's Office of Crime Prevention and Policy has rolled out a grant opportunity for nonprofit organizations to provide support and security enhancement to groups which can be targeted for hate crimes. And while the Human Relations Commission does not qualify as an applicant, it can partner with any nonprofit which operates in the city of Annapolis. So I shared details about the grant with several organizations whose members could be affected by the activities of hate groups. And specifically, I contacted the Caucus of African American Leaders, Annapolis Pride, Centro de Ayuda, the Islamic Society of Annapolis, and 2 synagogues for which I was able to obtain email contacts. I did receive one response from Carl Snowden. Carl went about the process of looking for a grant writer, and he's got a grant writer. I then asked him whether he would be amenable to the commission partnering with them on this project. And Carl's response, which I'm going to come up to right over here if I find it. My question, to Carl was, would you welcome the commission serving as a partner? And his response was, Michael, would love to collaborate. So the caucus would welcome the assistance of the commission as a partner in this venture. And I certainly hope the commissioners will want us to embrace this opportunity. I think it's a great opportunity to work in conjunct. And we don't know for sure whether they would get the grant, but I'm not sure how many people would really apply. So I was really, really pleased by that. How do commissioners react to that? Is that something that you're supportive of? Any comments? Yeah, Helen?
Would that not include churches that have been vandalized for hate crimes?
It's a good question. I think the answer is yes. I think that it would.
So, Tricia, didn't the city offer some kind of grant to churches that have been vandalized, or to keep for security?
I believe you're right, Helen. I know it wasn't just the city, but I know that the church that I attend was given Homeland Security funds in order to put a security system in.
Yeah,
And,
I thought that I read that.
But
somewhere.
I know that the grants that the city gives out to organizations, including churches, that they were looking for ways for that to be through a nonprofit as well, to,
Right.
to be able to receive them for the specific programs the churches had proposed over time to receive those grants.
So would it be appropriate for a church to apply to the state for this one you're talking about, Mike?
I
don't know the criteria that they have. Yeah.
I think that they would be eligible for it.
Okay.
They are a nonprofit group that was victimized by a hate group. I think that they would be eligible for it.
Okay.
That would be my thought.
The idea behind this was, and I want to give credit to Rhonda McCoy, because that's that's the source I had. I only passed on what Rhonda provided to me. Because we had reached out to Rhonda McCoy to try and coordinate something that was beneficial to both the police department, the local community, and obviously the role that the HRC plays as provided under the city code with regard to responding to individuals or groups that are victims of hate crime. And I know you wanted to get that level of training underway. Now with MCCR having, some of their training, which is in concert with the Attorney General's office, I don't know where this could go. It's probably worth exploring on a couple of fronts. But how you could reasonably assist the community and both education and response is probably the way to go there.
Now, what Tricia is referring to is the flyer, which I sent around to commissioners, I think just a few days ago, which described I guess you could call it an all-day workshop
Yeah, I saw
that
that.
the Maryland Commission on Civil Rights is holding at Harford Community College. It's like an 8 to 4 program, which mainly focuses on two things. It's going to look at the latest hate bias statistical report.
Mhm.
Then it's going to talk about ways in which individuals and organizations can respond to hate crimes and bias incidents. It is offered in person. It's not offered virtually. It's an in-person meeting, so you'd have to go up to Harford Community College. But it is free. There's no cost outside of the transportation costs. So if there is anyone who's interested in that, I think you can follow up on your own and just simply sign up for it, register. You've got to register in order to take part. And I think that's mainly so that they have enough food for people at lunch and things like that. So if there is anyone who's interested in it, let me know. I'll see what we can, how many people we can get to go. But I know the commission has wanted to do this kind of training. And it would be nicer if it was a little closer in Hartford.
Yeah.
But it still looks to me like it's a really, really good program. And I know the Maryland Commission on Civil Rights has been really promoting it because I just got a second mailing about it today. They're probably pretty anxious to get people to sign up for it. But again, it's something right up what we're doing, and I think we'll benefit from working with the Caucus of African American Leaders. And I'm going to contact Carl to say that the commission. What do you want the commission to do? So what basically I'm going to ask, and pretty much we can be a supportive party on that. Okay, we talked extensively about item D. Item E is suggestions from the HRC Outreach Committee. I know the committee had a meeting recently. I know that it consisted of Chuck, the committee chair, as well as Linda and Rosemary. So Chuck, I'm going to ask if you could share with the commission what conclusions you all reached or suggestions you made, and then give Linda and Rosemary a chance to add their own thoughts to it. So Chuck,
I think this may be brief. Most of our discussions focused on the subpart D, that we've just been wrestling with for the first half of the meeting about public housing and mold and poor conditions. And one of the outcomes was I was to send an email to John Masana. No, I don't have that right, Tricia.
Manasseh.
And copied his boss, copied you, Mike. And I assume the reason I didn't hear back was Mr. Lyles and his concerns
it's quite
about.
possible. I don't really.
Yeah.
I know that there's a lot of things in flux right now in response. So.
Right. Well, but I don't have further information than that. Obviously, did not get a response. And Mike, I really, in addition to speaking to that one commission that no one knows much about, I really think we need to spend some time trying to find a positive path forward that doesn't rely on HUD. Because but the whole thing about Navy housing is a red herring. I mean, that's military housing, their criteria, and the rest. We don't need to spend any time on that.
Yeah.
We've got to figure out a way that isn't. I mean, this is like a circular firing squad. It's great that the city may even succeed in that litigation. It's still going to leave people in poor housing. And we've got to figure out, and certainly I agree with Linda, before we in any way have a forum or anything like that, we have to know more about this and what a positive outcome would be that would be sustainable. Even if HACA got a one-time bailout to maintain or fix mold in various housing situations, the probability that's going to last more than a year is, in my view, is close to zero. And we got to figure out a way going forward that would provide a sustainable solution for the current folks that are in poor housing. But I would defer to Rosemary and Linda for further comments.
Okay. Ladies?
Well, the other thing that we spoke of in our committee was, for those of us who've been on this commission for a while, and for
correct.
people
Yeah.
that are new, relatively new, we were hoping for some sort of new commissioner orientation.
I agree.
What's our charter? What do we have control over? What don't we have control over, etc. And I think, Mike, you and I both, we talked about this on the phone, and you had some ideas regarding being current on what our charter is and what we are tasked with doing. And of course, the other legislation that may impact what we do here.
Well, the one thing that I remembered commenting on it, Rosemary, was that I meet with all new commissioners. I have a packet, a commission manual, and sit down and provide a description of what the commission has done, talk about the two committees. So I have engaged. I have engaged in that. My question would be, if you want to, you say an orientation, is there something more that you think should be done?
I think, did you want to say something, Linda?
Go ahead, and I'll add in my 2 cents at the end as the newest member on this commission and what I would have liked to have had.
Well, I think what you have to say is more important than what I have to say. So
okay.
put to you.
So I think what we talked about with, because we do need to get new commissioners, right? So that's what we're thinking about, and thinking about how to be inclusive with getting commissioners onboarded. My onboarding was meeting with Mike, did we have lunch or coffee? I don't remember. Mike gave me the white binder with, several long documents in it. And we talked a bit about the outreach committee or the outreach team and the complaints team. And he asked me to commit to one, and just kind of gave me an overview. And my thought would be, if we do onboard new commissioners, and we know that usually they come on in September, that we have some kind of onboarding training. And maybe it's in a slideshow format or something that's a little bit more digestible, because we also have to remember that not everybody learns the same, right? Maybe there's a mixture of video. I know, Mike, that there's discussion of you having a video on the website. So maybe that, just looking at all the pieces that we put together as potential training pieces and materials. And then the training that I just took with the city for the commissions, including some of that as well. So I think it's more, it helps make us feel more confident. That training I just took with the city answered so many questions that I have had for the past year that I didn't really even understand that I had. So, and I feel more confident now in my role as a commissioner. So I think that's what we talked about, is just being able to feel confident, as well as the fact that we just went through a pandemic and so many things have been reshuffled, and just getting, everybody else on this commission aligned and feeling confident. So that's what we talked about for outreach, was really starting with us. Which I did not expect we were going to go there. So, but I thought it made sense. But I thought it made sense.
Well, I thank you for going to the commissioner training, and I'm glad it was a productive and well attended event. And you did share with me you had the opportunity to talk with the executive director from HACA, and you didn't?
It wasn't the executive director. It was Jackie Wells, who is the president
Board
of
chair.
the board. And
you're right, you're board chair.
President in one of their properties.
Yeah, it sounds like it was a good networking opportunity, especially for new commissioners, or relatively new commissioners. So thank you for going to that. Just a couple more items, and we're going to slip out of here. Next thing is, this is very current. This is an update on Annapolis Ahead 2024. Just, I guess, in the last 24 hours, the City Council has requested a 60-day extension in the consideration of the comprehensive plan. And there's a number of what they consider to be outstanding issues that need more attention and discussion in their work groups. And this is the work groups of the council that are doing this. And according to the latest information, which I have here, they've basically looking for updates in the following areas: making public safety a priority, addressing the overall readability of the plan. It's 400 and some pages. Adding ward area maps and profiles that list recommended actions for each district, and addressing the growing senior population in the city. And those are the ones they are looking at. Now, there's a possibility that they could convene a second public hearing. And if they convene a second public hearing, then communities and citizens can come forward with their own proposals that they don't think were adequately covered in the comprehensive plan. That would give us an opportunity, if we wanted to go in and raise the issue of the two Annapolises, with social tensions connected with that, and how we go about making Annapolis a hate-free city. And that was all in our suggestions to the Comprehensive Planning Committee. That's going to depend on whether or not they hold another public hearing, because the work sessions by members of the council are focusing on things they've already seen. It's already in the plan. They just want to play with the language, and they've asked for this extension. So just to tell you where that is at. The second thing I'd like to report on, once again, this was in the Capitol within the last, I think, two weeks, and that is County Council voted unanimously to approve a measure introduced by County Executive Stuart Pittman that expanded the authority of the County Human Relations Commission to have investigative authority over alleged acts of discrimination due to either public accommodations or to employment. How this came about, I'm just surmising here, is the County Human Relations Commission is housed in the new office headed by Asha Smith. I believe it's called, she's Director of Equity and Human Rights. I think that's her title. And I think she went to the county executive and said, I want this thing changed, and and he said, sure. And there was no opposition to it. What that means in practice is that the County Human Relations Commission can now do their own investigations in public accommodations and in employment questions. They will not have to seek the involvement of either a state organization like the Maryland Commission on Civil Rights or a federal organization such as the U.S. Equal Employment Opportunities Commission. They can just investigate it on their own. And they will also continue to be able to do investigations in the area of public, in the area of fair housing and housing issues. So I just wanted to make everyone aware of that, that has taken place. I don't think it'll have a major impact on the commission's work, certainly not right away. It might down the road have some impact on it. If you have individuals who will go directly to the county rather than come to the city commission, because the county commission will have the power to investigate it if mediation fails. But mediation is still going to be a part of that, of their process, the same as ours. So I just want to make sure that everyone's aware of that. Are any comments or questions? Okay, all right. Okay, we have reached the conclusion of our agenda this evening. Are there any other thoughts or comments that folks have before we adjourn? All quiet. Okay,
parts of the meeting, Mike, were depressing.
Hopefully
Mike,
it wasn't. What?
I do have a question.
Yeah, Linda.
Did we get a complaint on the new online form?
I wouldn't have received it. It would have gone to Claudia.
Not that I'm aware of. I
Okay.
haven't received any complaint. I think there was a question why the system wasn't up and running, but I thought that was a comment that Alderman Dewan Gay made in an email, but not a formal complaint.
That was a while ago.
Yeah,
No,
that was a while ago.
No, a complaint filed on the new online form. So there was none.
Not that I'm aware of. I haven't received it.
Okay.
No, and I know of no complaint that's been filed with us.
Okay.
Okay, well,
Now that you've raised the issue, Linda, maybe I can make sure that emails are being forwarded to hr@annapolis.gov, or making sure that system is working so that it triggers and comes directly to our email account.
Yeah, sure. And I'll find out. I actually posted the online form on my Facebook page, and it was shared by several people. And then somebody responded that they thought somebody was going to file a complaint. So.
Oh, okay. So anybody can do a test complaint and see what happens. That's another way to test this out.
You know what? I'll do that now, Claudia. And so then you can see in the next, few hours. If you don't get anything, then we'll know.
Yeah.
Check.
Okay.
Well,
thank you.
I will be proceeding in the next couple of days to probably tomorrow to communicate to the commission that was recommended that we speak to by Alderman Gay. Again, I do have the email address for the most current chair, and I will contact that individual and basically give that person a briefing of what we've done so far on this and ask if they would like to participate with us. I would be optimistic that they'll say yes. If they say no, that would be a red flag to me that they're sort of giving up the fight, but I think they'll be willing to. I think it would be good for us to have a meeting with them and to come up with an outline for a course of action that we can take that will result in something meaningful and positive. And, you know, I can certainly resonate with what both Linda and Chuck have said, that we don't want to have people forced into responding which they have in the past to terrible conditions and then not being able to do anything at all about it. I think we don't want to go there. At the same time, I think that Mr. Lyle was very helpful in pointing out the complexities that are involved in this issue and the differing parties that are tied up in this. And in the end, we can look at the impact of a lawsuit and all of this, but there are people every day who are experiencing great trauma because of the terrible living conditions that they find in some of these public housing facilities.
May I add a thought here?
Yeah, sure, Claudia.
Okay. I chair a task force for the underserved population for the Anne Arundel County Transportation Commission. And it came about because we had a similar issue about transportation needs for homeless and the underserved population. So the focus of the task force is to mobilize ideas. And one idea that we did happen upon that is still right at us is grant funding through private resources, AARP, the infrastructure package that the Biden administration passed. So in creating a different model than where HACA is now and all that, there are tons of money accessible through private sources. There are corporations that do a lot of funding to various nonprofits and various entities that might be a solution oriented.
Mm-hmm. That's a good suggestion.
That's all. Thank you.
Thank you, Claudia. Okay, if there's no other business this night, I would like to thank the commission for their participation. We will have a meeting in June, which will, I think, largely focus on our follow-up efforts in in all of these different things that we talked about tonight. There'll be updates, and with respect to the proposed public hearing or on the whole issue of housing, try to come up with something that will get us moving in I think, an appropriate direction, and come up with some information anyway that can, I think, educate both us as well as the public as to how we might want to go forward with this. So thank you all. Thank you all for coming out this evening. I really appreciate it. We had a good turnout of commissioners, and I thought the meeting went well.
Thank you, Mike. Good night.
Good night, everyone.
Good night.
Right.